It's another Friday in the Gambia, September 13, 2019. As we are gathered here today, it is humbling, given the trajectory of the entire procedure of this, the circumstances leading to today's event, to have the Honorable Minister of Justice, the Honorable Baa Tambedou, the Honorable Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure, the Honorable Ibrahim Silla, the Honorable Secretary General Mohammed B. S. Jallo, and our ladies and men of justice, and the entire press corps gathered here today to unveil the much-awaited Janneh Commission report, a report that interrogates the alleged activities, extra-financial activities of former President Jammeh, his cronies, his enablers, parastatals, and whatever. Without much ado, I will just yield back to the Secretary General, who will give a brief statement on behalf of the President, and thereafter the Honorable Tambedou would proceed with the report and the white paper, and then from there we would have questions from members of the press and answers from members of the high table, as it were. And then, however, I'll be remiss, really, if I proceed or yield over without making a very sobering comment. It is quite shocking, to say the least, that the document, the report that we are about to unveil has actually been significantly leaked to the press corps, the online press corps. And last night, I had a sleepless night as I saw allegations and counter-allegations from different parties, insinuations as to who may have actually leaked this precious document that everybody was waiting for. Until these leaks were leaked, the only thing I know about it was what I put on Radio Gambia, that the forfeited landed properties would amount to close to $1 billion. The sale from the cattle and other domestic articles was $100 million. I never saw the report. I never saw the white paper. Until I speak to you, I have not seen the white paper. I have not seen the report. Until as I'm speaking, I haven't. So it is quite unfortunate that we have men and women among us in the civil service who are now bent on actually leaking every document before the document is due for public view. It's just unfortunate. And what comes with this is that people who have nothing, absolutely zero, to do with these leakings are maligned, insulted, all kind of garbage, being thrown at them, But then this is a very serious matter. I'm sure the Attorney General has his ways of dealing with it, and when he comes to the table, he'll talk about that. Mr. Jallo, you're welcome.
It's an honor to be present here in the launching of this report. But first of all, let me just, make a short comment on the statement made by Mr. Sankara in terms of the leak from the civil service. I don't think this government, I think everybody agrees that this government is very open as far as information is concerned. There is no interest to nuzzle the press. Okay, that has to be very clear. But I think at the same time, we have to understand that there are certain things which may have, some security risk as far as the state is concerned. That is why in all developed democracies, every piece of information has different level of security. Certain things can be available to the public immediately. Other things have to be available, after certain considerations are made. As regards this report, I think it was the prerogative of the President to set up this commission, and we thank the Minister of Justice and the commissioners for doing a diligent work. It is also His Excellency the President, who decided, based on the powers given to him by the Constitution, to share this report publicly, because it is felt that it is in the public interest that this report is shared. So that, nobody is saying that we are hiding anything. Okay, both the report and the white paper will be shared to the general public. Like Mr. Sankare said, it's unfortunate that maybe some people have leaked it, but it is no secret that I think it was the last cabinet, it was discussed, and the public was informed that cabinet was discussing this report. So on that note, I would like to thank once again the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice and all the commissioners, who spent weeks and months and a lot of investigative work to come up with this comprehensive report. Thank you very much.
I'll go straight to the details. You will recall that upon the installation of the Borough administration in 2017, preliminary reports received from, among other institutions, the Central Bank of the Gambia, the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation, the Gambia Ports Authority, GAMTEL, NAWEC, AMRC, GNPC, and other public institutions and government agencies, indicated that substantial funds were either directly or indirectly withdrawn, paid out, or expended on instructions or directives received from the office of the President during the tenure in office of former President Janneh, sometimes for unknown purposes. It was discovered that bank accounts were opened into which funds paid by members of the public and intended for the state were directly controlled and expended by former President Janneh or on his instructions. It was also discovered that former President Janneh, during his tenure in office, had accumulated at least 131 known landed properties registered in his name or in companies and foundations in which he had shares or an interest, and that he operated at least 89 private bank accounts directly or through the aforesaid companies or foundations. Based on these preliminary reports, His Excellency Adama Barrow deemed it in the public interest to launch an inquiry into the financial and other activities of public bodies, enterprises, and offices as regards their dealings with former President Janneh, his family members and close associates, his financial and business affairs, and the assets accumulated by them during his tenure in office. Accordingly, in exercise of the powers conferred on him by Section 200 of the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia 1997 and the Commissions of Inquiry Act, Cap 30, Volume 5 of the Laws of the Gambia, His Excellency Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, on 12 July 2017, issued a Commission of Inquiry into the financial and other related activities of certain public bodies, enterprises, and offices as regards their dealings with former President Janneh and the accumulation of assets by him, his family members, and close associates, and for connected matters through Gazette Legal Notice number 15 of 2017, issue number 0796, with the following membership: Mr. Suahata B.S. Janneh as chairperson, Ms. Abiose George as member, and Mr. Baima Sen as member. The commission was assisted by Counsel Ami Bensouda, who was appointed by me. The members of the commission were thereafter sworn in, and the terms of reference of the commission included to inquire into and investigate the circumstances surrounding the withdrawal of diverse sums of money from the Central Bank of the Gambia, including from the International Gateway account, the Carnegie Mining Project account, and any other account or fund lodged with the Central Bank, to inquire into and investigate the involvement of the executive arm of government under former President Janneh in the withdrawal and application of funds or resources of public bodies, enterprises, and offices or projects, including but not limited to Social Security, GPA, GAMTEL, NAWEC, AMRC, and GNPC. To inquire into whether and to what extent the resources meant for the government or people of the Gambia, including grants, donations, and loans, were diverted, converted, or misappropriated by or under the direction of the former executive. To investigate the extent to which former President Janneh was involved in public procurement and whether any losses were caused to government by reason of such involvement. To investigate the existence, nature, extent, and method of acquisition of assets and properties of former President Janneh, his family members, and close associates within the period from 22nd July 1994 to 21st January 2017, and to investigate whether such assets and properties were acquired lawfully or otherwise. To investigate the companies, businesses, and bank accounts operated directly or indirectly by former President Janneh and his close associates, or in which he had an interest, or in companies in which he had an interest. The Commission was also mandated to identify whether any person or group of persons committed any offense in relation to any matter inquired into by the Commission, and to recommend ways of improving on the supervision of government accounts in a bid to ensuring that irregular withdrawals from the said accounts do not reoccur, and to recommend ways of recovering or restoring any assets, monies, or other resources that may have been illegally taken, misappropriated, misapplied, or lost. The Commission submitted its report in 9 volumes, totaling 1,600 pages, to the President on 29th March 2019. Following a review of the Commission's report, and in accordance with Section 203 of the 1997 Constitution, His Excellency President Baa has decided to publish his reaction to the report in the form of a white paper to be published here today, together with the full report of the Commission. Because of its voluminous size, I'm afraid we can only share a few complimentary copies of the report with you here today, and encourage the general public and the rest of you to obtain copies from the GPPC in Carnegie. It will be, of course, for sale. But first, the government wishes to highlight the commendable work of the Commission in general and the procedure that they adopted in their investigations and public hearings, the transparent manner in which the Commission conducted its proceedings, and the extraordinary measures it had adopted in order to ensure fairness and adherence to law and due process is highly commendable. The Commission, therefore, has made a number of findings and recommendations in its report. The government has carefully considered the report, and in its white paper has stated its decisions and accepts, except as otherwise stated in the white paper, the findings and recommendations as they relate to the issues brought out in the report. In taking the decisions reflected in the white paper, the government has not lost sight of the prevailing governance environment created by former President Janneh at the time. Notwithstanding, in most cases, members of the business community in their dealings with former President Janneh were motivated by greed and opportunism, while those who served in public office were mostly motivated by a combination of fear and self-preservation. The government has also taken into account the fact that the Gambia is currently going through a fragile political transition to democratic rule after over 2 decades of dictatorship. Consequently, the government's main objective, as reflected in the white paper, is the recovery of money stolen and or misappropriated from the state by former President Janneh, his family members, and close associates. For the avoidance of doubt, the white paper does not, and neither is it intended to reflect all the findings and recommendations of the Commission. It only contains the key findings and recommendations that the government wishes to highlight from the report, and mirrors the findings and recommendations against the list of individuals identified in Volume 9 of the Commission's report. Some of the key findings of the Commission include the fact that former President Janneh, who was the primary subject of the Commission's inquiry, and whose salary in July 1994, when he took over power, was a mere $2,744. The Commission found that former President Janneh was engaged in an unconscionable land grab and acquired 281 landed properties throughout the country. These include private, residential, and commercial properties, islands, forest parks, wildlife reserves, and wetlands. The Commission also found that disproportionate amounts of resources were wasted, misappropriated, and diverted by former President Janneh, amounting to at least over $1 billion, to be precise, $1,065,000,000, 304,718,000 United States dollars, and 29 million euros, and over 29 million euros. The Commission found that the meager resources at the disposal of our country were managed at former President Janneh's whims and caprices, without regard to the structures and processes in place to ensure coherence and accountability. That former President Janneh, from his actions, reserved the right to appropriate funds from wherever they were available to him for procurement of goods and services, and made no distinctions as to whether the project was for his personal benefit or for public purposes. That at least $3,300,000, $1,858,000 United States dollars, and other amounts in pound sterling, mostly in cash, were improperly authorized and directly transferred for use by Zainab Janneh from various accounts in the country. The Commission found that former President Janneh's financial dealings and all activities were at all stages facilitated, assisted, or even guided by a number of people. The Commission has identified 17 persons as close associates of former President Janneh based on the evidence before it. These include military officers who left with him into exile, private individuals and companies that had business dealings with him either directly or indirectly through companies in which former President Janneh had an interest. Apart from the persons who fall in the said category, the Commission also found that there were others who worked with former President Janneh by virtue of the offices they held, many of whom were also involved in his financial dealings and or activities. The Commission underscored that the damage former President Janneh has caused to government institutions, public resources, and state-owned enterprises is of such serious nature that the government ought to introduce a motion before the National Assembly for charges to be brought against him for theft, economic crimes, and corruption. Based on the recommendations of the Commission, the actions taken by the government are expected to generate at least $1 billion from the assets forfeited to the state and to be sold. However, it should also be emphasized that the Commission was not only established for the recovery of monies, even though it was equally important that there was a credible and transparent process of accountability which provided the government with the legal and evidentiary basis for our recovery efforts. The Commission was also meant to expose the level of corruption and the extent of reckless disregard for fiscal discipline and safeguards against abuses. Therefore, the Commission has made a number of policy recommendations in order to improve on these safeguards. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to inform the general public that a lien has been placed on the properties of the following persons until further notice: Mr. Amadou Samba, Mr. Tariq Musa, Mr. Fadi Mazegi, Mr. Elia Raymond, Mr. Martin Keller, Mr. Nikolai Bazenu, Mr. Dragos Bazenu, Mr. Ali Yusuf Shawara, Ms. Warren Njai Sise, Mr. Tony Ratas, Ms. Fayal Diab Ghanem, Trust Bank Limited, and Guarantee Trust Bank Limited, and M.A. Harafi and Sons. I thank you all for your attention. We will share copies of the white paper with you, and as the government spokesperson said, unfortunately we can only spare a few complimentary copies of the full report. It's voluminous. You can go to the GPPC and try to obtain it. I'll now cede the floor to the Honorable Minister of Information. Thank you all.
As per the advice of the Attorney General, he would not like to take questions because of legal ramifications, because some of the issues that are mentioned in the report and the government white paper may be a subject of appeal in the superior courts, and he has advised that he would not like to take questions lest his comments may impact on any matter that this could be a subject of litigation. I think this is an important milestone for the government of the Gambia, having gone through an important process of investigation, and the actual report is now public. The white paper will be distributed to the press here, but the voluminous investigative work of the Commission, which is over 1,500 pages, will be handed over to the Gambia Press Union, 3 copies, and the GPU can now decide how it will be distributed to the rest of the media. Maybe you can help them with the photocopies, or those that are eager to get their own complimentary copy can just go and buy from the Gambia Printing and Publishing Corporation. But this is one important step of strengthening our governance and democratic process, that citizens ought to know what is being done in their name. And now that the Commission has finished its work and then the government accepted the report and published the white paper, we want to thank the commissioners, those who collaborated with them in investigating this important piece of work, and also the Ministry of Justice for taking the important lead in ensuring that the work is published and also made public. We also want to take the opportunity to thank the President for the courage that he has taken to publicly make this report available to the members of the public through you, the media. And we also want to take this opportunity to thank the various media houses that participated in the investigation process, in terms of your time and energy and resources by, playing the different sessions on your different platforms. Some of them, were aired live. It took a lot of resources and energy and time. We want to thank you most profoundly for that. We are also very grateful to the Office of the Secretary General for the support that they have always been given to the Commission and to the Attorney General's office, more so the Ministry of Finance as well, for making the resources available to the Commission. On behalf of the Honorable Minister, the Secretary General, and the government spokesperson, I want to thank you all. Thank you.
So, and I'm making this on my own behalf as a journalist, but also as a member of the Gambia Press Union. You mentioned about the issue of the documents that were leaked. The Secretary General mentioned it as well. I just want to clarify so that there is no confusion that your concern from the government officials, civil servants leaking the documents, perhaps that is out of touch with what you want to do, and this is not what you want to do, and this, as a journalist, that is not my concern. My concern is to journalists. If there are documents like this and situations like this that are leaked to journalists, it is not a crime for journalists to publish it, and we celebrate this. That has to be clear so people don't vilify journalists for leaking this document. If we have them, we publish them. This is not just Gambia. This is what happens everywhere in the world. They don't wait for reports to be released. If we have leaked documents and they are not obtained through fraudulent means, we publish them. And on behalf of the Gambia Press Union, we celebrate this, and this is not a crime. And I'm saying this just for clarity.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The Commission report itself, which is over 1,500 pages from the Gambia Press Union, if you want, you can also serialize it. Although most of what they have said in this report, were already subject of public knowledge because they sat in public, and they directly and copiously copied all the testimonies of the witnesses and the people who appeared before the Commission. So our recommendation as a government and our position is what basically is in the white paper, because we have taken a position on that, and that is why we are giving to all the media houses a copy of that white paper. That is the position of the Gambia government. What we don't want to do is to make opinion on our recommendations, because if people who are not in agreement with the position that we have taken and want to take the matter to court, then you may be held liable for the comments that you have made or opinions. So that is why we are saying this is our position as government. Take the report, serialize it to the public so that they can all read it. And the Janneh Commission report also will give that to the Gambia Press Union so that you can all have. There is nothing hidden there. We are not hiding anything. What we want to avoid actually is the opinions on the report. The Attorney General is also ready to take any governance questions that you may have, or any other issue that you want to ask us as government. We are prepared to answer those questions.
He has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, and for that clarification.
Yes.
Maybe I didn't get you right.
No, there is no problem. For us as government, it is important we engage the media. If you kind of misunderstood what we said, yes, it's our position that we come and clarify that, because the fact that we have called you here to share this report is ample testimony of our openness to the media. And yeah.
Okay, I have a few questions, but they're directly linked to some of the...
in all fairness to the...
Yeah, I'm not raising that. Now,
yes,
I'm making this question on behalf of those skeptics and pessimists all over Serekunda, Brikama, and the like. Because as a journalist moving around, I've discovered that the euphoria and the the promise that came with the advent of the new regime, way back in 2017, there was this rising expectation that we have a new Gambia, that things will not be as the same before, it will not be as business as usual. But 3 years down the line, if you talk to the common person and they are sincere to you, they open up to you, they will tell you that they are disappointed, that this is not the change they were looking for. That if you look at our governance system, our society, of course, a lot has changed. Nobody can deny that. A lot of people are freer. But yet, a lot remains to be changed. And some of these pessimists and skeptics are saying that if you look at the recent relationship between the police or this security and the citizens, a lot needs to be worked on. Because it seems the police are still living in the past.
I think, Jeto, we need to be quick to ask the question because you are going round and round.
Okay,
and
let me go directly.
Yes, please go to the point.
A lot of people are of this view that if we continue with these trends, very soon Gambia will slide back to dictatorship, or will end up having what they call benevolent dictatorship. How do you react to that?
Well, you talk about the police-public relationship. I mean, indeed, you know that we have an ongoing security sector reform. This is extremely important. Yes, we are all not happy with some of the things that are happening with all these allegations that are coming out there. But what I can tell you is that, you know, change is not a static thing. It's an ongoing process. And the fact that we have taken this bold initiative to start this process of security sector reform is really an ample testimony of government's commitment to ensure that, you know, we make serious inroads. The other issue of skeptics. I mean, democracy is all about skepticism. I mean, people will make noise. It's important when those noise are made, government listen and then, you know, act appropriately. I mean, you don't expect people in a democracy to sit and don't make noise. You don't expect people in a democracy to sit and don't make, you know, criticisms. You know, so this is, democracy goes with criticisms, democracy goes with noise, and then we really accept that. But the fact that, you know, we have 3 commissions of inquiry, I mean, 2 have already submitted a report, the Janneh Commission, and we have published that. The Baa Commission, we have published it. We have the Constitutional Review Commission now. I mean, we are expecting the report hopefully in the early part of 2020 or before the end of this year, in December, hopefully they will finish the work. And then we are expecting the TRRC also to continue sitting and then, I mean, unravel some of the alleged human rights abuses that have, you know, that were committed in this country. So these are important milestones for any, I mean, country. But more importantly, today we have a very strong media that is not gagged. I mean, we have a very strong civil society that is vocal, that is engaging the populace, and their concerns are raised with vigor in the media. We also have a very strong, robust parliament that we all know is doing a very good job. And we have an executive that is actually engaging the people on their needs and concerns. So this is democracy at work, and we will continue to work with the relevant institutions in the government, especially the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Defense, and also the Attorney General's chambers, to fast-track this issue of security sector reform.
Okay, final question.
Let's give opportunity to another one.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, okay.
My sister.
I want to refer my question to the Justice.
Hold on 1 second, please. You know, here you maintain decorum. I have told you you're not supposed to stand here. Can you find a specific location and be stationed there, please? Yes, please. Please.
Yeah.
Can you give him the mic?
Yes, Mr. Mane.
Yes. Thank you very much. I want to refer my question to the Honorable.
You are blocking the cameras behind you. Okay, thank you.
To the Honorable Justice Minister. I wanted to know whether he is considering returning the diplomatic passports of his family, and also I want to know whether he has a second thought when he was applying diplomatic passport for the wife of Janneh.
Okay, the Attorney General would like to answer that.
Well, I'm sure by now all of you know that I'm not one to shy away from responding to questions. I will respond to this question and on the diplomatic passport issue just this once, and that's it. I will not speak about it again. I sometimes joke that it's only when I travel outside the Gambia that I feel that I am a government minister, because of the way other places treat their ministers. It's a different story here in Gambia. But let me clarify the facts. And this was in June 2019, less than 3 months ago, that I inquired from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about those who may be entitled to diplomatic passports. And I see a lot of misconceptions about that as well. Diplomatic passports are not only meant for diplomats. That's a misconception that is out there. And that is why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs gave an advice, I think it's an interview in the Foreign newspaper, to categorize those who are entitled to it. In addition to specific categories of persons, it says, and the President has a discretion to give it to any person. So that's in addition to the group that is already identified, and that group includes diplomats and their dependents. And clearly it is contained in that same response, and which is the information that I was given as well, that cabinet ministers and their dependents, their wives, their kids, could be given diplomatic passports, in addition to the President's decision. Now, on the basis of that advice, I wrote to His Excellency the President to grant diplomatic passports to, these are the closest members of my family. I did not ask for it for my spouse and children. I asked for it for my spouse and mother. My sisters were just add-ons. I mean, I had responded to this issue earlier on in a private forum, but that was a personal response. This is now my official one. For my mother, it's not for a stranger to me, it's not for a friend, it's for my own mother. And if I can, by virtue of my office, request for a privilege that is totally lawful and legitimate, that I can request from my principal, who has the power and the discretion to grant that request, to facilitate my mother. We're not talking about strangers here, or friends, or distant family members. To facilitate the travel of my mother for a specific purpose. I went to lengths in the request to justify why I wanted it for her, and also to provide assistance to her. What's the point of my mother carrying a diplomatic passport in Saudi when she is moving in a wheelchair and there's no one to move with her? So because of those reasons, I submitted the request based on the advice that I received, and correct advice as well. The President approved it. I had nothing to hide. I didn't even label the letter confidential. I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And it's unfortunate that in perhaps a desperation to look for something on me, people are using this opportunity to say all sorts of things against and about me. But it's public office. I know it's going to end someday soon. But I'll tell you this. Ever since I assumed office 2.5 years ago, I have never been so hot in my life. Because we're talking about my mother. And if I did nothing wrong, nothing against the law, nothing unethical, nothing immoral, and I am being, it hurts me. That's all I'll say. Well, thank you. I mean, there are parts of that question which are mine and parts which are not. What the anti-crime unit does is the responsibility of the police and the Interior Ministry. However, as the government, as the Honorable Minister of Information said, there is a security sector reform ongoing. We do not expect old habits to die quickly. It takes some time. But I think one thing you will all accept as well is that there have been improvements in the way that the police are dealing with ordinary Gambians compared to the past. We can't deny that. Now, there will be occasional excesses. There is no doubt about that. I will be hard-pressed to point out any country in this world, including the most advanced democracies, where there are no police excesses occasionally. So the challenge for us really is to try to prevent it from happening, and that when it happens occasionally, we address them. And I think that was the spirit in which Amnesty International submitted their report. And allow me to say as well that I had engaged Amnesty International on that report, and we came to a mutual understanding that the report was not meant to be conveyed in the way that it came out. So they admitted to some extent that the report could have been better conveyed. It was written communications between us because we conducted our investigations following that report, and we were able to establish that actually not everything in that report was 100% accurate. And so instead of coming out with a statement to counter amnesty in public, because of our collaborative work, we reached out to them and pointed those out to them, and they admitted that as well. So just to share that with you, that not everything you read from some international organizations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They are as fallible as we are in government. There's no doubt about that. In terms of why I discontinued the prosecution of 30 and retained 7, well, we have to understand how our criminal justice process works in this country. The police have a duty, they have an obligation to fight crime. That means preventing it or investigating it after it occurs. In the course of their investigations, if they have reason to believe that a particular suspect has been involved in a crime, then they will conduct their arrest based on preliminary investigations, and then because of the 72-hour requirement, they would take them to court. I think we all know that we are trying very hard to make sure that everyone who is arrested in this country is brought before a court within the 72 hours. I think that is credit as well to this new government, unlike the past. Now, the reason why we do that is because the police cannot complete their investigations within a 72-hour period. And if the person is a flight risk, then the police will take them before a court of law and request for them to be remanded in custody while they continue their investigations. At the conclusion of those investigations, the case file is sent here to the ministry for our review and advice as to whether there is sufficient evidence to proceed with the case in court. Now, while in this particular occasion, because of the public interest in the matter and the number of youths who were arrested, it was out of collective concern that I didn't even wait for the police to conduct their investigations completely or send the file here. I reached out to the police and I said, the number is too high, 37. We have to keep remembering something. This country is still not as stable or as perhaps entrenched in democracy as we all feel these days. It's still a fragile transition. It's only been 2.5 years. And that is why a lot of our international partners are commending us every day for the progress that we're making in ensuring stability. That is why the UN Secretary General has included Gambia in his sustaining peace agenda. So let's not assume that everything is rosy and dandy here. It's not. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Transitions take time, especially political transitions. So I thought in the interest of public stability, I requested the police to review the evidence that they have, which led them to arrest the 37, and to narrow down on those who are directly responsible for the arson, for the burning down of Gorgimboop's house, and also the burning down of a police vehicle. I asked them to zero in on those, and they came back with the report that, okay, they think these 7 are on the basis of the evidence that they have as at that time, this was last week before we traveled to Qatar, that these 7 are the ones that they have identified. So I took the decision to discontinue proceedings against the other 30. Of course, the charges included rioting, unlawful assembly, but like I said, it would not be in the public interest to prosecute 30 youths at that time. But those who are remanded in custody, we actually didn't oppose bail when their lawyers applied for bail. We had to revise and amend the charges because what they were charged with, arson, is not bailable. So we had to revise the charges to bring it to a lesser serious offense so that they can be granted bail while the police continue their investigations. We can't also allow people to burn down people's houses and properties and then walk away. That's not right. That's not how a country is governed. Otherwise, we will all be victims, each of us. And that is why we are taking a very strong position on the arson offense. But for the time being, I want the police to focus on those who are directly responsible. I've asked them to review the case of the 7 as well, going forward, and hopefully I will hear back from the police. It may or may not go down further, I don't know, but this is what the police have given to us. Like I said, we have not yet even received the file officially from the police, but to show the proactive nature of the government as a whole, because let's not forget that the Justice Ministry is an integral part of government machinery. So is the police. There are different parts, and we all do our part. We all complement one another, and there are checks and balances, and that's how systems work. So if the police do not get it right all the time, we try to provide them with assistance that can fill in the gaps. If we don't get it right, the judiciary is here to provide an additional check. This is how systems work. So that's all I can say about that.
Just to follow up, would it be fair to say that the public is concerned that the focus is on the burning of properties and not so much on the killers of Seka and the murder of alleged torture of Usman Baa? Is that the focus of the government, or is that something your ministry can help to reorient things? Because life, we believe, should come before property, and whether your ministry and the rest of the government, they believe in this.
Let us be fair to this government. The police did a brilliant job following the murder of Keba Seka. Let us admit they arrested the culprit, who was a police officer, and that culprit is in detention. Now, you can't say that the police have prioritized the burning over that incident, because the culprit, the alleged suspect in the murder of Keba Seka, a police officer for that matter, is in custody, and the police acted very swiftly. Now, in terms of the alleged torture of Usman Dabo, I think the recent report, the autopsy report was released, and I am not very sure because I was away when that happened, but I think the government has shared that report with the public to establish the cause of death. And so, this is why fake news is dangerous. Because when no, it's true. Just last December, I think I was chatting with Honorable Minister, BBC had a documentary, Beyond Fake News. I'm not sure how many of you saw it. The dangers that it causes in society. And in the particular case of Dabo, the rumors, unfortunately, did not help. And some people, reacted spontaneously on the basis of those unfounded rumors and caused further damage and destruction in this country. So these are all challenges in an emerging democracy. As I said, we will try to prevent where we fail. We will try to remedy when there are excesses. But we can't say that the police prioritize the burning of Gorgui Mbub's house over the investigations into the deaths of Keba Seka or Dabo. Thank you.
I think
would you now consider giving preference to other people who are not ministers and their mothers are in that situation for government to give them a diplomatic passport?
Right from the start, I said, I joke that this is the only, when I travel outside this country, is when I feel that I'm a minister. Now, you can't put ministers in the same box as everybody else. Every morning, you wake up, you go about your personal business, right? You go about your personal business, your livelihood, your work. Every morning, ministers wake up, and public servants, they go about the public's business. They leave aside their personal issues. They do work for you, for the public. And that is why they are recognized in some of the non-monetary privileges that ministers are given. That is why you're treated as a VIP when you go to certain places. Not everyone is given, because we carry the public burden. And so if the law allows for a minister to access certain privileges and their families, well, complain to the law. Don't complain to me. I am not the maker of the law. I am not the enforcer. Sorry, I'm only the enforcer. And so to ask that if the same could be extended to others, well, maybe every other citizen should be given a car, should be given an orderly, treated the same way as every minister. And then maybe ministers should not be blamed when they leave public work and go and start to run after their own personal issues, just like you do, just like all private citizens do. That's the difference. That's the difference.
My colleague question is whether now you will consider...
Oh, I will return these passports, not because they were acquired unlawfully or wrongly. It's because I don't need the distraction. I don't need the distraction. My family doesn't need the distraction. And it has served its purpose. And just to reiterate the point, a week and a half after they came back from Hajj, they submitted their request for US visas. Go and find out from the American embassy whether they use the diplomatic passports. They use their ordinary passports. Just to underscore the point that really, it's much ado about nothing. Cabinet ministers, in fact, anyone who serves in public office, demands some latitude, some respect for the office, not the persons. You can hate the person, that's okay, but it's the office that you have to look at. And we can't all be treated the same way. I'm not a communist. I don't pretend to be one. I don't want to be one. I'm a capitalist, born and bred.
Thank you very much.
The three voluminous reports, the Secretary General the Secretary General will do that. But also just to emphasize once again that there is nothing hidden about what we have done here. The report is public. Please serialize it in your newspapers, or you can serialize it in your media houses, radio, TV. It's public document. We have taken a position as government, and that is why the white paper is published. The report is also here. GPU will distribute this to its members. So that's it. Thank you so much. The Honorable Secretary General would like to hand over the report and the white paper to the Secretary General of the Gambia Press Union for onward distribution. Yeah, the president of the GPU. So you can see that is this is one report. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books. It's volumes. Yeah. So that's one copy of the report. So you can see how big it is. So that's one. And then we have 3 of these serif that you will have at the Gambia Press Union, and maybe you can help facilitate the photocopy, or those that are eager to get the Janneh report itself, you can have it. But for our position as government white paper, we have made enough copies for all of you so that you can get it. And then this is, no, I don't know the price, but it's over 1,600 pages of the Janneh report. Yeah, you can find that out from the printing department. We'll give you 3 complimentary copies of the report, so you can take that.
I think to be fair, the government is giving a complimentary copy.
Yes.
As you can see, even the costs of production
is high.
Yeah. That is why it's given to the
This is the white paper?
printing.
Okay.
So it's not just a journalist. For any person in public who wants to have a copy, you go like all other documents.
Yes.
You want to have a copy, you go to the Gambia Public Printing Corporation. All right. And then I think like the other speakers have said,
yes,
we cannot change a lot of things that happen in 2 decades, in 1 year. All right, but let's accept that we are moving on the right direction.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of these things that are happening today has never happened.
Exactly.
All right. It has never happened in many countries. We have studied some countries, but in many countries, even this does not happen.
Yeah.
All right. And let me also say that, because I think some of the comments is 9 volumes, and one of the volumes is actually policy recommendations for government. All right. That shows that we are ready to make changes You cannot just make changes, as I said, in a day.
Yeah.
But government has to put systems in place so that in the near future, the whole public would have confidence that everything is going right. So on behalf of His Excellency the President, we now hand over this copy to the GPU as a complimentary copy.
So this other one, as you can see, is the white paper. We are going to give 3 to the GPU also, but we'll give each of you a copy. This is the position of the government, this white paper, and it entails everything that we as government has taken in recognition of the good work that the Commission did. So it is our position, and it is also public. You can serialize this, as well as the report, produced by the commissioners. Honorable Secretary General.